Good morning and welcome to a new video. We are in the Sma Glen and we're hoping to visit another hill fort, which is off in this direction, and it's called Dun Mor, and there is quite a few Dun Mors. I think there's at least 10 hill forts that are called Dun Mor. And then we're also hoping to visit Bucanty Roman Fort, which is really close by, and we might even be able to see it from the hill fort. So please come along today. You've got the beautiful view towards the rest of the Sma Glen there, and the hill fort that we're wanting to visit is somewhere beyond this hill, and we've parked in a lay-by to go straight up there because it's really steep. So this is probably the gentlest way that you could possibly go. And in this direction, this is General Wade's military road, and it leads along for quite a while, but it's a little bit too long for us to just go along and then come round the hill the long way, so we're opting to go straight up there today. The very first part of the walk is pretty boggy, but it's not too bad. It's not overly waterlogged today. But we are now coming up into the hill itself, and there's a car parked down there. And here is the view that's opening up very slowly as we climb up the hill. This is the kind of every man fends for himself scenario. You just have to make your way through the heather. Also, it's around about 21 degrees Celsius and pretty intense sunshine just now, so feeling a bit... Ooh. We're having a little break here, enjoying the view down the glen, and I realised that this big hill here is Sma River, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but this is a hill that I was considering going up. With that said, I just checked the map and there's another hill called Mill River in that direction. There's a third Mill River, which is further along in this direction. Ooh, so here we are on top of the hill. A nice view over Sma Glen in that direction, and you can see Schiehallion even. That's the pointy mountain in the distance. And then, as we turn around, we can also see a hill fort, which is right there. I'm very intrigued by the scarecrow that somebody put there. I do wonder why it's there, but either way, we are now on the way to a hill fort. Look how beautiful. I got really excited when I saw this little patch of bog cotton from afar. So pretty. Look at how red I am in the face. I can't believe I made it onto the path finally. We were going through the heather for such a long time. Ooh. So, if I had to give you a recommendation, think about parking somewhere where maybe you're going to be walking a longer distance, but you're going to be walking along the path, unless you're really adventurous, in which case just do the same thing as we did. Also, rookie mistake number 2 is we maybe didn't bring enough water. We brought 2 litres of drinking water for 2 people, so it's 1 litre per person. So if you're expecting to be out on a long day in the summer, maybe 2 litre per person might actually be a good idea. I almost missed that. That's a little shelter. That's really cool. There's even a little seat up there. Maybe we're gonna have a look on the way back. So here's our beautiful hill fort, Dun Mor. And the first thing that came into my mind is that it reminds me of Craigobney, which is a hill fort to the east of here. I've done a hill fort tour of it. It's just something about the shape of the hill and then the top as well. And there's poor sheep running away from us.
Yeah, even the surrounding terrain is really similar. It's this kind of heathery.
Yeah, yes, there's a lot of heather. I found a small patch of blueberries and I'm supplementing our lack of water with some juicy berries. So the entrance is not known, but there's a gradual slope going up there. Apparently there's something similar over there as well. Well, there we are. There's our hill fort top. Some wall and the cairn. And the field over there, that's where the Roman fort should be. Somewhere around there. It's not too easy to see, but I should be able to find something once we get there. Dun Mor, by the way, means big fort. So it's probably very unsurprising that there's lots of them. If you go in Canmore, well, if you type in Dun Mor into Google search together with Canmore, you get at least 15 entries or something like that. Were people unimaginative when giving things names? Perhaps, but we don't want to be too pedantic about it. This looks like something round, which is perhaps the traces of a building. And then we have two sets of walls which are concentric around the top of the hill fort. You can see a bit of a terrace there, going all the way around. It just reminds me of Craigobney more and more, the more I see of it. So, here's the big flat top. It's definitely a distinct edge going on. Here's the rest of the wall. And here you have your view towards the road and the glen. As far as the walls go, somebody suggested that this could be a timber-laced fort, but apparently there is not enough evidence to support this idea.
Dun Mor has been surveyed but not excavated formally. The measurements internally are 50 times 30 meters on the northwest to southeast axis, and you could describe the fort as pear-shaped. The inner rampart is visible as a tumbled down stone wall around the summit, and there's a second wall on the south and east side, which is 25 feet or 7 meters from the inner wall. When the fort was surveyed in 1956 for the first time, one certain entrance was identified at the northwest end, approached by the hollow track, and a possible entrance on the northeast. However, when it was surveyed again in 1970, this could not be traced anymore, which suggests that the visibility of some of the features has deteriorated over time. The walls were built using local stone, whatever was lying around, and incorporating the rocky outcrops as well. The walls were likely no more than 6 to 8 feet in width and no more than 5 feet in height. There's a ditch on the southeast side interrupted by unexcavated causeways, so it is suspected that it's an unfinished construction, and there's another possibly unfinished ditch on the south side. And there's also a rectangular scooped floor outside the outer wall on the southeast side, which is round about 35 feet times 25 feet.
So now we have to go back, and we have to take the same route back that we came. So here's the little shelter that we saw earlier on. Let's get a bit of a seat here. Judging by the remains of bullets, I would guess that this is where the hunters go. It also smells very much like gunpowder. Maybe even to hunt grouse, I think, is what they're hunting here. You can hear the noises of little flies somewhere inside. So we've already gone to our next location, which is here behind me in the field, and we're hoping to find a Roman fort called Fendoch. And there is a threat of rain, so we'll see whether there's going to be some, but hopefully not. Hopefully I'll have the opportunity to fly the drone, so let's not dilly-dally and let's get going. So we're in the middle of the field. That is probably a hill fort up there. And then somewhere here is a Roman fort. I suspect it's somewhere over there. It could be that landscaped a little bit. It could also be beyond that hill.
I have to admit that I didn't prepare for the Roman fort quite as well as I did for the Pictish fort, and as a result the footage I took has a somewhat limited perspective. I also spent too much time on the remains of a stone building, which turned out to be a homestead, likely from the 18th century. However, I do think the drone still does a good job on showing the edges, at least on the southwest side of the fort, which is the side of the fort that we were on. The size of the fort is roughly 187 meters times 109, and this is measured between the ditches, which I think nowadays are the boggy and waterlogged bits. So that's about 5 acres of surface. This fort was excavated between 1936 and 1938, and turf rampart defences were identified. They also found an annex of a smaller size, about 65 meters east of the fort, and a causeway 60 meters south of the fort. A geographical survey from 1998 identified the ditch as a double ditch with so-called parrot beak entrances at each of the 4 gates. There is also an interesting structure which includes square and oval shapes about 45 meters southwest of the fort, which people have suspected could be a bathhouse, but it's unconfirmed.
There's a bunch of cows over there. This is the way we came from, so now we're gonna have to pick a different way to go back to our car. Okay, so basically the cows came in that direction and chased us off the fort. So there's those cows. But yeah, the field up there, it's a very big field. You see the edge there, so the whole field could have been somewhere where Roman legionaries could have been. We've made it back to the car, and we crossed over the burn after we crossed the fence, and the farmer came and spoke to us about being careful of cows, which of course we already have plenty of experience in running away from cows. But yeah. And it's very curious that the Roman fort is practically at the foot of the Pictish fort. So here we are again. It's been more than a month since we were last here. Fendoch Roman fort in this field. And it's not just because I kind of missed Fendoch the first time round that I wanted to come back to have another look. But since then I realised that right across from there is another Roman thing, and that's a Roman signal station. So roughly up there on the hill. And so I thought, okay, why not? We're just going to come back here. We're not going to go back in the field because from what I can see there's still cows there. But we're going to start the drone from the side of the road here and try to get a bit of a view of Fendoch from slightly further zoomed out. And then we're going to walk over there and have a little look at the signal station as well.
A 10-mile or 16-kilometre long ridge runs along to the north of the River Erne. It is known as the Gask Ridge, from Gask in Scottish Gaelic. This refers to a projecting tail or a strip of land. Along this ridge runs an ancient Roman road, built during the Agricola campaign during the 80s AD. This was the northernmost Roman frontier. Multiple forts, fortlets, watchtowers, and even a big legionary fortress called Untitled were built along this road, which turned southeast towards Dun after following the Gask Ridge from east to west. Fendoch in particular can be considered a glen blocker fort, as it sits right at the entrance to the Sma Glen, and the signal station is positioned so that anybody coming from that direction can be seen. Essentially, this Roman frontier follows the edge of the highlands and cordons it off from the lowland area, which is Scotland's agricultural area. So some suggest that the forts were in fact meant to stop raids coming from the highlands. Roman historian Cassius Dio writes about two tribal groups, the Maiatai, mainly situated south of here, around the hill fort Dumiat or Demayat, and the Caledoni, who are mainly associated with the highlands north of here. So perhaps this series of forts was intended to keep an eye on the tribes and their activities. The idea that these forts were meant to defend from tribal attacks or to push further north has a weak point in that there simply weren't enough men stationed in these smaller forts. Only Untitled had a big army of legionaries capable of taking on one of the tribes at full force. Either way, this frontier was short-lived. The forts were abandoned after about 6 years, or by 90 AD at the latest. In 86 AD, the 4 legions in Britain were reduced to 3, and one of them, of more than 5,000 men, was removed to be deployed elsewhere, making an occupation of northern Scotland unsustainable. The Romans retreated and built Hadrian's Wall in 122 AD. In 138 AD, Emperor Antoninus Pius attempted to occupy Scotland once more, and the Antonine Wall was established, and some of the Gask Ridge forts were repurposed, but to no avail. By 160 AD, the Romans had to retreat back to Hadrian's Wall.
So this is the extent of Fendoch that you can see from the road. And I would say you see it fairly well. You can see the entirety of the fort from here, starting with that edge and going all the way over, and then the slope finishing off there. So here we are on the other side, and there's only sheep here, so that's good. So the signal station should be up there somewhere. Right, so now we have to somehow make a way across over there. Well, this crossing was a lot easier than I thought it would be. Can you see it? Right there. It's a raised ring. And then there's a few lines in front of it as well, which could be part of squarish buildings, but that was probably a signal tower. And you should be able to see Fendoch quite clearly from here. There it is. I think you can see it quite well, especially this edge and the whole length of it.
The Sma Glen Signal Station is very clearly intended as a lookout post for Fendoch. It is considered to be of the Gask Ridge type. Typically, this would have been a rectangular timber watchtower, which would have been between 5 to 10 meters high, and so it would have allowed for quite a view far into the glen. And if you look from certain angles, there certainly is a hint of a square structure in the middle. There's a near circular bank of 22 meters in diameter, enclosing an inner ditch and a ditch platform of 16 meters in diameter. There are remains of earthen ramparts. However, the line running along the hill is actually an old field boundary and is not part of the signal station. Fendoch is about 1 kilometer to the southeast. The tower was described as the eye of the fort, as there is no view into the Sma Glen from Fendoch. There would have been a signalling system in place, perhaps using beacon fire or smoke to notify Fendoch whenever something was going on. For example, if a larger group of people would have come from the highlands.
I just want to show you my makeshift landing pad, which worked well enough. And this is an old yoga mat, which is broken, and it folds up nicely in my bag. So I said I was going to buy a landing pad, but we'll see how this one works for now. It's pretty good. It just sits on top of the header and it doesn't fly away in the wind. I have to say, compared to the time we went over to Fendoch and we were sweating our stuff with all the cows around, this is much more chill and relaxed. There's only heather here, so there is no cows in heather because they don't need heather. There's only sheep, and it was an easy way up. The barn we had to cross was tiny, and here it is behind me, and I'm going to go over and look at it from a foot. Hopefully you got a good idea of what the scale is of this potential signal tower from us being right next to it. And before we go over, I want to point out that the hill fort, Dun Mor, is right up there. So there would have been a pretty good visual contact between the two. And then of course Fendoch down there. And my partner suggested that perhaps the people who lived on the hill fort had to give permissions to the Romans to be able to build the fort, but they may have been bullied into it. But yes, so the signal station had a really good view of the road, which you're going to see in a minute, and would have signalled to Fendoch whenever somebody was coming up through the Sma Glen, and the guys over there would have been able to see it. You know what? It kind of reminds me of an Irish ring fort. Just the way it looks, just the way it's got this inner circle and then the outer circle around it. Because there's a bit of a ditch here. That's very interesting. I'm not suggesting it is an Irish ring fort, but it does really look very similar. So maybe that's the kind of structure it would have been. So here you have the road, and you can see as far up as the glen up there. Also, I'm kind of feeling like it was necessary for us to come back at this time of the year because this heather is absolutely beautiful and it smells divine as well. So I don't regret anymore not getting a good shot of the Roman fort, because I was able to come back here and have a nice and relaxed time. So with all of that said, I would like to say thank you for watching and trekking along over the period of a whole more than a month. And there will be a playlist of other hill forts in the description below. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you for watching.